Here's for this mic.
Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you find a seat. That's yours. I think this is the expert. Okay, I'll reach over. Hey, John. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this rainy December evening. I just want to read our notice. The public hearing of the Milford Board of Police Commissioners and the Milford Police Department will be held on Monday, December 9th at 5 p.m. at City Hall Auditorium, 110 River Street, Milford, Connecticut. I will call the said hearing to order and ask Diane to do our roll call.
Commissioner Bergamy, Commissioner Jago, Commissioner Major, Commissioner Morone, Commissioner Riccitelli,
Here.
Commissioner Rubenstein, Chairman Smith, and Chief Mello and Deputy Chief Rocha are present.
Thank you, Diane. Tonight, Chief Mello will present for consideration a proposal for using automated traffic enforcement safety devices here in Milford. Following his presentation, we will open up the mic for public comment. We also will accept written comment, as is outlined in the rules of the meeting. Speakers will be permitted 3 minutes. I will keep time and give you a 1-minute warning, so please comply with those rules. At this point, Chief, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And thank you for coming here this evening. And I'd like to start with the why and the why we're here. And the reason we're here is not just to discuss automated traffic enforcement safety devices or speed and red light cameras as is commonly known. We're here for 2 reasons, and the second one is the most important. And the first reason is the state of Connecticut, like 20 other states in the District of Columbia, enacted legislation in 2023 that allowed for municipalities to use speed cameras and red light cameras for traffic enforcement. Now, these are nothing new. These have been around since 1987. But it's just recently that Connecticut has decided it is time that they need to use these as well. And we're not leaders here. We're late in the game. Many municipalities have already applied for these, and these applications are being decided upon up at the state DOT. So that's the why. Also, what's important about the why is that the state of Connecticut, I think, looked around, and if you look at the legislative history on this, which I would encourage you to watch some of the public hearing and some of the testimony and some of the deliberations, and they put some pretty strict restrictions and some requirements in there to try to improve upon lessons learned in other states or other municipalities. But the second reason we're here is the most important reason, and that is because for 4 decades now, I've taken very seriously my responsibility to keep you safe, to keep your children safe, to keep your family safe. I've dedicated my life to doing this, and I expect that those on my staff do the same. I have noticed personally, and before I even talk about data, that since 2020, we have not only seen an increase in traffic. In the last 4 years, the Post Road, US 1, has seen an average daily volume increase of 2,000 cars a day. And that's going to continue to go up. We know that we're continuing to build and add apartments and so forth. But we've seen an increase in complaints. We've seen an increase in traffic accidents. We've seen an increase in violations. Now, don't take my word for it. Regardless of whether you're here to support or oppose this, I'd like you to do something. I'd like you to think about when you drive on the Parkway, or you drive on the Turnpike, or you drive on Route 1 when it's not congested, or you're driving just about any highway, whether it be Gulf Street or Seaside Avenue or Woodruff Road or Orange Avenue. And how many times has somebody been close to your bumper because you're not going fast enough and they want to go faster? How many times have you seen people driving dangerously aggressive, weaving in and out, running through red lights? And ask yourself this: are you like me? And when I stop at a red light and it turns green, I look both ways before I go. Now, you may not like the use of technology, you may not even favor speed cameras, but do you agree that something needs to be done? And so one of the things that we have done this year, we spent a lot of your money putting out officers on overtime to do traffic enforcement, and we've increased our enforcement last year versus the 3 previous years by 82%. But accidents still have gone up, and complaints still come in. We've done a lot in terms of education. You see, we put a lot of signs out there with radar signs for the people that unintentionally are speeding, so they could say, okay, I realize I'm going fast. And they work, but they only work to a degree, because people that intentionally want to speed, they know that there's no consequences, and they'll continue to drive through those. If you gave me 10 more police officers, it would cost you about $1.5 million a year. And I'll take those 10, I'll take 20. But is that sustainable? And even that can't do what this can do. And so I'm going to describe this program to you, but I want you to understand the why. There's no decision being made here this evening. This is your opportunity for your voice to be heard, whether you're opposed or whether you're supported or whether you think it should be. What we're hearing is everybody wants them on their street, and they can't go on everybody's street. So I'm going to talk to you about how the program works, the process, because I think that's important as well, and the streets that we're proposing. The information that we learn here today, just like the information that we've received from written testimony, will then be forwarded to our Board of Aldermen. A lot of them are here tonight. Some of you, they're in the audience. They'll look at those and they'll make informed decisions. Hopefully, they'll represent your interests, the interests of the people that voted for them, as to what you want or what you don't want. Either way, I'm okay with it. I'm doing my job to try to keep you safe. I know that some people are afraid of technology, some people don't understand it, they don't appreciate it. I get that. It takes a long time. I think when we started having cameras on our cell phones, we probably didn't like the fact that anywhere we are, somebody can record us and put it on social media, and there's no retention schedule. They can do it, it can stay up there forever. Or that every time you're on 95, or anytime you're on a highway, or anytime you're in a store, or when you're driving on residential streets, somebody's recording you. And I know that probably makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but that is the world we live in. Instead of being afraid of technology, I strongly believe that we should be leveraging technology, taking advantage of technology. I think what I've learned is a lot of folks don't realize that the evolution of law enforcement has a lot to do with the use of technology, to do any number of things, including partnering with private sector. So, with that, this is the Public Act 2316 that allowed cities and municipalities to use speed cameras or red light cameras and to enforce speeding and red light violations in school zones and other areas with a high probability of crashes, or in business districts where where we see a lot of complaints and we know there's a lot of violations. And so there's some requirement. That's why we're not putting them everywhere. And so the data supported where we felt these should go. I know it's a messy slide, but it's important that you understand all these points. It's based upon the development of a Vision Zero action plan. If you haven't read 2316, read it. In fact, not just read it, go to ct-n.com and watch the public hearing. We based it upon our comprehensive traffic safety plan, which included not just the recommended use of these devices, but also increased signage, and where we think there should be some re-engineering, and where we put radar signs. We spend thousands of dollars every year to put those lighted signs up, just to warn you, just to educate you that you're going over the speed limit. We submitted, even though we weren't required, we submitted our comprehensive traffic safety plan to our Board of Police Commissioners at a public meeting. They approved that plan. That's a draft plan. Our next step was to request by the Board of Aldermen at a public meeting the approval of an ordinance, a local ordinance. I want to tell you what's different about this than you see. You know, we've had red light cameras on buses for many years. Those are infractions. This is a local ordinance, and I'll explain to you why there's a difference. The Board of Aldermen, I was up here for about 2 hours. I was asked a number of questions, and they approved the ordinance 13-1. The next step is a public hearing. That's what this is today. You can submit written testimony, you can give oral testimony. Is Kathy Kennedy here? Kathy Kennedy was actually in the public hearing as part, I believe, as part of the Appropriations Committee. I'll have to verify that. But she's on the Appropriations Committee. And I believe there was a joint Appropriations Transportation Committee public hearing, same manner as this. You can probably still find that and watch that. After this public hearing, we'll take what we've learned from you and what we've learned in writing from written testimony, and we may or may not modify the plan. The Board of Aldermen may ask us to modify the plan, and we'll again present that to the Board of Aldermen. Now, we have a lot of technical data a lot of technical stuff we need to do to this plan. I won't get into all that, but there's a lot of requirements. Once we finish that, we'll send it back to the Board of Aldermen, who will hear it for a second time, the final plan, and they can either approve it or they can reject it. And I would encourage you to reach out to your elected official, whether you support it or whether you oppose it, before they take that action. When and if that plan is approved by the Board of Aldermen, then it needs to go up to the Connecticut Department of Transportation. And they have a lot of requirements as well, and they will analyze that. They will make sure that it's equitable, they will make sure the data supports it, and they will make sure we've done all these things. And we also provide the technical data that they need to make a decision. If the state DOT they can approve the whole plan, they can reject the whole plan, or they can approve just parts of it. I know in Stamford, that's just, theirs just came back. Then we will select a vendor using the procurement rules set forth by the City of Milford. Once you select a vendor, the vendor will then build out the infrastructure. The statute or the bill requires that we then enter into a 30-day educational campaign, which we're prepared for. And then before we go live, it requires that warnings only are issued for the first 30 days, so people that weren't aware are now aware of where these cameras are, because the whole idea is to change behavior. The location of these cameras, these ATESDs, is based upon crash history, frequency of violations, school zones, pedestrian zones, as determined by the Comprehensive Traffic Safety Plan. Some of that data, we've done some of the study, and some of the study has been done for us by others. Speed cameras, they're not AI devices. They don't learn. You know, they're not there to learn. They're not there to do computations. They're there just like they've been since 1987, although the technology is much better to take photos of cars that are violating the state traffic laws, and only those cars. The vendor selected sends those photos back to the police department we determine, we make sure that it fits the criteria, and then we issue a civil summons. That photo, once that fine is mailed to you, and I want to draw a distinction here. Don't raise your hand, but if you've ever been pulled over by a police officer and given a traffic ticket, it's expensive. It's very expensive. Far more than the $50 fine here. It also, your motor vehicle knows about it, your insurance company knows about it. This is different. This does not get reported to motor vehicle. This does not go on your insurance. And the fine is $50 for the first offense and $75 for subsequent offenses. And you're only fined for speeding violations over 10 miles an hour. Why is that important? Now, I've had some folks say to me, $50 isn't enough. People won't learn at $50. And it should be more. And I've had someone say it should only be $5. Well, parking tickets are, you can get an $85 parking ticket here in Milford. But the idea is to change behavior. In the criminal justice system and traffic enforcement, always based upon there are consequences. Brian, can you do me a favor? I'm not getting anywhere with this. Can you? There we go. Oh, sorry. Is that me? Is that what it is? Here we go. So the photo of your driver's license, as I said, is taken, and it's deleted 30 days or after you pay the fine. So if you pay the fine, 30 days, it's gone. If you don't pay the fine, it stays around until you pay the fine. We're looking to change behavior. This is very important about this program, because you're going to hear a lot of things, I'm sure. Part of the requirements of this program by law are conspicuous signs, something like that, to warn you that you're approaching a zone with a red light camera or a speed camera. You have plenty of opportunity to change your behavior and slow down. In addition, the law requires that we notify the mobile navigation apps, and we have to verify that we've done that. So if you use Waze or Google, I don't know what Apple's equivalent is, but Google Maps, or if you have that service with your car, you'll know. It'll tell you there's a speed camera coming up, and gives you the opportunity to change your behavior and slow down. Once you get this $50 summons, if you want to contest that, there's a due process built into the state statute. Again, I gave you the number. You can look it up, and you could read it for yourself if you'd like. You can have that. You can request a contested hearing in front of an arbitrator, not appointed by the police department. The number one complaint that we get, that we've had since the day I've been chief, and these aldermen in here should probably tell you the same thing, because I've spoken to many of them who've come to me, is speeding. People going too fast. In front of your schools, in front of where you shop. And it isn't just the data that we see on accidents. It's the fear of being involved. It's the near misses that you've all had. The number one complaint. Here we go. We've seen an 82% increase in traffic enforcement in 2024 over the past 3 years. At the same time, we've seen a 9.6% increase in crashes, ravaging 4 fatalities a year over the past 3 years. The previous past 3 years, we averaged 1. Understanding, though, that one of those years was 0 because it was a COVID year. Vision Zero. That's the plan. We want to reduce fatals and accidents, especially those accidents with injuries, to 0. Realistically, can we get there? Probably not, but that's the goal. That's what my goal is. And if I could do it, if you want to give me dozens more police officers, I'll try it with that, if you can afford that. And if we decide not to do this, we'll figure out a way. I'll be back asking for dozens of police officers, because I believe that the highways where people are driving dangerously fast and recklessly. Speed is the single greatest contributor to lethal and serious traffic accidents. Changing lives, changing behavior means saving lives. The cameras are only there to supplement police officers. Police officers aren't going away. But even if I could put a police officer at every site that we have, at every problem that you folks have, 24 hours a day, I still couldn't monitor speed continuously. Because when an officer pulls somebody over, he or she has to then complete the traffic stop, back the ticket, and often do a police report. And it takes a lot of time. And some people like that because it reduces your chances of getting caught. Nobody wants a speeding ticket. Anytime I've spoken to anyone about doing this, the first thing that comes to mind, first thing that came to my mind is, well, am I going to get caught? And I get that. They supplement police officer enforcement. That's what they do. And this is very important, if you're a police officer, you really appreciate this. And I would ask that you appreciate it as well. Speed cameras offer an objective enforcement of speeding and red light violations regardless of driver age, race, gender, or socioeconomic status. One of the requirements, and that's what police officers are facing all the time. I mean, you know, we're talking about technology. Stand up for a second. You're all on camera right now. You're on camera. Every time you walk in front of a police officer, every time you drive by a police car, you're all on camera. One of the requirements of this bill is that these devices aren't placed in disadvantaged areas of high poverty. It's really has to do with equity, with equality, to make sure if you're putting them here, you need to put them here, and the data is supposed to drive it. We don't have those tracks in Milford. We've done the research. You can look for yourselves. So that's not going to be an issue. I apologize, we have some latency with this moving. Okay, the proposed locations. I'm going to try to go through this very fast, but I'm required to do this, so if you could just bear with me. These are the proposed locations. Now these are the primary locations. We want to start off slow, and we'll look at data in other places in the future. You probably don't realize, but one of the things that we do is we have 3 officers that all they do is traffic studies on ways to try to slow traffic down. That's what they do. Orange Avenue School in Platt Tech. Anybody live in that area? Live in the Cedarhurst Lane, when those cars come off Orange Avenue, come flying down there? You've been complaining to me for years. I know you're frustrated, I'm frustrated too. When the field people start playing in those fields and there's no parking and people are speeding and there's people walking around. Orange Avenue right there, here's Orange Avenue School right down here in the bottom. We'll let the traffic engineers tell us the best place on Orange Avenue. I'm wondering if maybe this needs a battery change. There we go. The daily traffic volume is about 4,400 cars a day. We've had 21 crashes on that street in this area over the last 3 years. Over 2,000 exceed the speed limit, but more importantly, 10 plus miles an hour over. So figure 11 over. Daily, there's 1,406 cars. If we project the compliance rate of 70 to 90%, a reduction rate, that's 984 to 1,200 cars. Now, how do we know that? We know that because speed cameras are all over the country, all over the world, in the developed world, and they're in many states. And so we can look at their data. We can learn from the problems they've had and make sure we don't replicate those. 70% is what they are telling us we will see on state highways, and 90% is what we should see on local roads. And I think the reason is you know they're there. You see the signs, you know the signs mean something. You know, I'm just going to do this by hand. This is, yeah, there we go. The next one is Merwin Avenue near Live Oak School. Anyone live over here? Anyone have children that go to Live Oak School? If you see me do this, Brian, that means I'm trying to, thank you. There's Live Oak School, there's Merwin Avenue, right there to the right, Brian. Traffic volume on that roadway, where those kids go to school and walk to school and get off on their buses, is 6,500 a day. 23 crashes over the last 3 years. Almost everyone violates the speed limit, you can see. But people that do 10 miles an hour over, and you're probably not doing 10 miles an hour over in a school zone. Almost 4,000 cars a day. Shouldn't we do something about that? At 70 to 90% compliance, there's the rate that we can hopefully reduce. And if you just have to subtract to see what those numbers are. Thank you. Let's talk about Gulf Street. Anybody live on Gulf Street? Right. I wish Karen Fortunati was still here. Because when Karen heard we were going to do this, she wanted to make sure that we got one on their street. And unfortunately, we didn't have it in the plan, but we added it once we saw the recent data. There's Milford Academy up on the right. And down below you have Gulf Beach. And you have all these homes. And you have people walking to the beach. And there's been a lot of work to re-engineer that, and we're doing more work to try to calm the traffic there. Oh, go back, Brian. Go back. Daily traffic volume on that street, 7,300 cars a day. Cars doing over 10 miles an hour, 2,650. And there's a projected 70 to 90% compliance. Shouldn't we do something about that? The Connecticut Post Mall, these are speed cameras we're talking about. We're not talking about red light cameras yet. Now, during the day when there's congestion, and so the data is a little skewed here because during the day, cars aren't going that fast. They're running red lights, but the traffic slows them down. There, Connecticut Post Mall to the right, you see the arrow, excuse me. Daily traffic, that was my fault, Brian. It actually worked that time, believe it or not. The traffic volume in front of that mall, 25,000, almost 26,000 cars a day. Over the last 3 years, 542 crashes. People doing more than 10, and again, it's skewed, 541 a day. But 59 vehicles are doing over 70 miles an hour. And during this brief time that we studied, we got 2 doing over 95. You think they're stopping for a red light? Shouldn't we do something about that? It's very difficult for us to do traffic enforcement on that road. I also want to tell you one thing as well. I'm trying to help you, but I ask you to help us. Over 225 cars that we've tried to stop have run from us, have gotten away because we don't chase cars from motor vehicle because we don't want to hurt any of you by chasing a car from motor vehicle violations. But 225 people have gotten away, that we know of. Let's talk about red light cameras. This is a red light camera at the Boston Post Road and Cedarhurst Lane going into the mall. Now, I don't know what that mall is going to be in the future. I don't know if it's going to be residential. I don't know what it's going to be. But we know it's a problem now. It'll be a bigger problem when we start having people living there and walking around. We know we have pedestrians up. We have crosswalks. We have a bus stop up there. There's a lot of folks walking up and down, and it's 6 lanes over here. Traffic volume in this one particular area is 32,711, and we have 121 daily violations, 122 accidents at that intersection over 3 years. Again, shouldn't we do something about that? Let's move on to the Boston Post Road in North Street. Right there, you'll see. Traffic volumes, 9,000, 139 red light violations a day. Over 3 years, 107 traffic accidents. Let's talk about the Boston Post Road and High Street. I don't have the traffic volume there, the most recent traffic volume, but I do know the red light violations are 387, approximately 387 violations on average a day. We've had 37 crashes over the last 3 years. I did a survey of the Live Oaks school community and the Orange Ave school community. I want to thank the folks from the Board of Ed and the school district for sending that out for us. It's an anonymous survey, parents and teachers. And this is specific to school zones. This doesn't have anything to do with anything else. But I wanted to see the opinion of how people feel about using this type of enhanced enforcement technology to enforce traffic laws where their kids go to school. I got 159 responses. 86% were in favor of it, 14% were opposed. And that was the question I asked, simply. I'm in favor of the police department using speed cameras to enforce speeding laws in school zones, or I'm not in favor. In fact, one of those that voted, two of them that voted no, if I recall, at least, let me just say at least one, said, I'm not in favor unless it's well-defined or well-planned. I get that. Some of the other comments, I received 12 comments, as I recall, and some of the other comments were, we want speed bumps. And then there was, mostly it was speed bumps and re-engineering of the road and some other things. And then there were some that were just opposed, and I understand that, and I respect that. This is the breakdown. 2.5% were administrators. Educators made up 10.6%. Every educator was in favor of this increased enforcement. That actually surprised me. And then the parents made up the rest, except for the nearly 2% of none of the above. We'll continue to do the things that we do, whether we do this or not. We'll continue to find ways to try to conduct enforcement. We hope that all of you support those efforts. We hope our elected officials support those efforts. I put this up here again because I wanted you to know that these things continue to happen. Someone wrote a letter in opposition and said, why aren't you doing these things? Of course we do these things. Oh, you can go back. So, ladies and gentlemen, just before I finish, I just wanted to hit on a few points. By the way, this is our comprehensive traffic safety plan. I just want to hit on a few points. When you do your own research, be careful where you're getting your data. Be careful what blogs you're reading. Blogs aren't scientific. Folks make up multiple names and they're surrogates, and they decide on which direction something is, which direction it's going to go in. I don't think we have to really talk about misinformation that we find in blogs. Let me give you an example. If a particular news story was on a right-leaning, like a Fox News, the comments would probably be favorable to whatever their position is. If it was on like an MSNBC, it's going to say something completely different. I ask you that you make your own informed opinion. Be careful where you're getting your data. If you're looking up on websites that are driver advocacy websites, look a little deeper and you'll see that they're opposed to any type of, or most legislation, anything that imposes a fine or tolls or any added expenses, and they're usually not favorable towards any enforcement. Look for your data at the Federal Highway Administration.gov or the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.gov. That's where I would go. It's just another tax. No, it's not. It's not another tax. Everybody has to pay taxes, I would assume. You don't have to pay this fine if you don't commit a violation. And then someone said to me, well, it's kind of like if you don't pay your credit card, you get a late charge. I go, no, it's not even like that. Because sometimes people can't pay their bills because they can't afford to pay their bills. You have a choice. You have a choice to watch, to listen to your navigation app. You have a choice to look at the signs. You have a choice not to speed. And you have a responsibility not to do that. The fines disproportionately affect low-income persons. I think I addressed that. And I would say just to the contrary, provided that they're put in areas where they're not, there's no inequality in the application. Milford doesn't have those tracks. And this is an interesting one. So you'll find articles, many articles, like in New York City where they've just added 2,000 more cameras, or Nassau County, or Mount Vernon, or Indiana that's doing this study, and you can find what you're looking for, but you can also find some, like New Jersey, that decided we don't want these anymore, and there were issues over fines and, administrative charges. By the way, the state of Connecticut puts a limit on administrative charges as well, which I thought was great. There's also evidence, And people can argue whatever evidence and use whatever data they want from whatever resource, credible or not. But there's data that shows that serious motor vehicle accidents are reduced. But there's some data, and this was brought up in one of the letters, but I was already aware of it during my research, that rear-end collisions, minor accidents actually, can increase in certain areas. And the reason being that's been given is because people are slowing down, or they're stopping for red lights, and sometimes people don't stop. The same thing can be said for a police officer at an intersection. The same thing can be said at a stop sign. Is that a reason not to do it? Do we not put police cars out there and do traffic enforcement? Do we not put stop signs out there, knowing that some people are going to stop? Think about when you're on the parkway, or especially on the parkway when you drive and you wonder why cars are slowing down, you realize there's a state trooper doing motor vehicle enforcement. So I hope your position is based upon you do believe that we should have traffic enforcement. Maybe it's not. We've gone through the anti-policing sentiments that we know what it's like. We know that not everybody appreciates what we do. But I hope it's based upon that. I respect your opinions. I look forward to hearing those opinions. And with that, it really comes down to kind of how you folks feel. And I'm looking forward to hearing your comments. I'm going to write them down. And at the end, I'll go over a few of the written comments. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chief. We'll now move to the public comment portion of our hearing. I'll ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. State your name and address when approaching the podium. The podium is yours. I guess I'll call, these are sign-ups, so these are the people in the order, okay. John Carissimi signed up to speak. John?
And thank you to the technician who just fixed the, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
It comes with the rental of the auditorium.
It was a very good presentation. I have to say, when I first heard about this, the 17-year-old in me thought, oh my gosh, this is, I'm going to get a ticket and it's going to be horrible. And, the days of being a 17-year-old and driving a muscle car. Well, I'm not 17 years old anymore. And still have a muscle car, but I'm not 17 years old anymore. I can tell you that so many things that Chief said are accurate and I've experienced. There are 1,400 traffic accidents in Milford a year. That includes fender benders in parking lots and things like that. Not all of them are injuries. There are 4 fatalities, as the Chief pointed out, a year in Milford. That's up in the last 3 years, not including this year, but that's up from 1 a year on average. Red lights have become a suggestion rather than a law, and you see that more and more. So yeah, I suppose I could lose my focus and get a ticket, but I'd rather have that than get T-boned or have my wife T-boned or my children T-boned at an intersection. People, when there are accidents and things like that, people tend to say, where are the police? Where are the cops on this? This is a horrible intersection, or it's this or it's that. Well, like the Chief said, that has to be traffic department personnel on overtime, because people don't realize there are only from 6 to 9 patrol cars out at any one time in Milford. I've asked people over the years, like, how many do you think are out there? I've had people say, I don't know, 20, 30. It's just one of those things people don't realize. There aren't enough police officers to go around, and like the chief said, if we want to pay for more, then you're going to get hit in the pocketbook when you pay your taxes. So to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, let's get these automated systems in place. I think it'll make people more conscious of their habits, and it'll certainly add a tremendous layer of safety, and I think we'll see some numbers go down, and more importantly, fewer people will be hurt, pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and Milford will be a safer place. So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
A representative from Live Oaks? No? A representative from Orange Avenue? Would you state your name and address?
Sarah Domina, 21 Downs Way. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. My remarks will speak in reference to the ATESD on Maroon Avenue, the Live Oak School District. I want to begin by expressing my gratitude for the approval of the installation of the ATESD in some of the high traffic areas in the city. And I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of the Milford Police Department, whose periodic presence in the Live Oak school zone has a positive impact while they're there. However, this presence is only temporary, and drivers often return to reckless behavior the very next day. While the Milford Police Department measures are effective, as it was addressed, they cannot fully address the problem. As an active PTA member and a parent of Live Oak School students for over 8 years, I have witnessed numerous near accidents in the school zone. Drivers racing through crosswalks, failing to slow down, texting, not paying attention to their surroundings. These dangerous behaviors create hazardous situations for children's parents and the crossing guards. As a parent, it is terrifying to witness, and it highlights the urgent need for measures like the ATESD to prevent a tragedy before it occurs. As you can imagine, our neighborhood is full of children playing at all hours, weekends, nights, holidays, summers. It's not only during the school day. With a busy park, a playground, tennis courts, basketball courts, shopping plaza, and the beach all within less than a mile of each other, the speeding and dangerous driving behaviors is always high. The ATESD will serve as a critical tool to ensure consistent and reliable enforcement, not only during school hours, as I mentioned, but its operation will deter and address reckless driving continuously. While I understand that some may have concerns about privacy, I think it's important to emphasize that the ATESD focuses solely on traffic safety and operates with strict protocols. It is not about surveillance, but about keeping our community, and especially our children, my children, safe. I am confident that ATESD will make a significant difference in improving safety for our school zone and the community of Milford as a whole. Thank you again for taking action on this critical issue. Your decision will have a lasting impact, and I am deeply grateful for your commitment to protecting our community and our children in our small city with a big heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a representative from Orange Avenue? State your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Tom Norris. I live at 17 Claudia Place in Milford, and I am the crossing guard at the Orange Ave School and have been this is my 5th year. And the amount of children, unfortunately, that cross since COVID has dwindled dramatically. But the fact of the matter is that the speed of the cars has increased dramatically over the last couple of years. I spend more time in my car because of the lack of crossers, but I will say I drive a Subaru Outback, which is a pretty solid car, and vehicles go by so fast that my car just shakes back and forth like if you were parked on the side of a highway and a tractor trailer went by you. So I'm very protective, as I'm sure every crossing guard is, of our kids and their families. And I think it's great that we're really seriously looking hard at something that can help to slow some of these cars down, learn some new habits, and retrain some people. It seems as though a school zone, for some reason, gets people to go faster than to slow down. And I find it a lot. There are a lot of commercial vehicles that use that street as well, trucks and trailers and things of that nature, and they don't slow down at all. So thank you very much for the time, and I'm very, very happy that we're looking to see what we can do to help alleviate this problem.
Thank you. Lori Holden.
Good evening. Lori Holden, 9 Lakeside Road. I'm in support of the devices. I'd also like to add, I would have them consider putting something in the green as well. I walk my dog every night there, and me and my husband, and we see people speeding like crazy. There's crosswalks that are very hard for cars to see in the first place, but people just flying through the red lights down there, I see it all the time, and every day we're down there we see it. I just want that to take into consideration as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Ken Holden.
Good evening. My name is Ken Holden, also 9 Lakeside Road in Milford, Connecticut, born and raised here in Milford, Connecticut. Thank you tonight, Alderman, for taking the time out. Thank you, Police Chief Mello, and your police department for doing what you do and providing this information and suggesting that this is going to be put in place. I am wholeheartedly for this opportunity to install these devices tonight in Milford as a start, and I'd like to see it continue in other areas along in Milford. Like my wife had expressed. I do know, we talked about getting T-boned on Route 1. I've been T-boned up in front of the Connecticut Post Mall, so I know what it's like to have somebody come blasting out at a Post Mall and hit somebody in the side and send them around. And it's not fun, and I'd like to see anything like that not ever happen again. And if this does help prevent something like that, or not, I won't say prevent, but if it does, limit the opportunity for that to happen, yes. And like my wife had expressed, Milford Center, that would be a nice add-on. I'm sure you know all this. You've done all the studies. It's a nightly occurrence. But I want to thank you for being allowed the opportunity to come speak here tonight. It's something we never thought we'd be able to do, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Wynn Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. Wynn Smith, 334 Edgefield Avenue. And I would like all of you to seriously contemplate the idea that this proposal is bad policy. This is an invasion of privacy and the intrusion of the surveillance state onto all of us. Under this statute, the vendor is going to be able to gather our credit card numbers, our bank account numbers, our home addresses, our telephone numbers, not just photographs of our cars or perhaps even us. Bad policy. If you want to see the kinds of things they can collect, look in proposed ordinance in language 14-61 in front of you. That in and of itself, and for hopefully you'll hear some of the other policy bases for this I can't go into in 3 minutes, but it should be voted down for that alone. But because the chief wants it and the mayor wants it, I suspect you're going to come under a lot of pressure to pass this and vote yes. I would suggest at least 4 different changes that you should consider in making in this before you pass it on. First, there should be a requirement in this ordinance that the vendor be selected by public bid policy. There is no requirement in this ordinance for that now. You will probably hear from the chief at some point in time, and maybe even the city attorney, that, under Milford policy, we're going to have to put this out for public bid. But the city policy can be changed or waived. I know that from my time as city attorney. And there are exceptions to the bidding policy. For example, if there's only one qualified bidder, among others. As well, I happen to know from my time both as city attorney and representing and being involved in transactions in other cities that you can draft an RFP so that you only wind up with one vendor. I have suggested language here that I will present to you that you require this to go out to RFP and require that you get at least 2 or more responses, or you rewrite the RFP and go out and get more responses. I have a concern here that they've already decided who the vendor is. Second, there's no requirement in this statute right now that we audit the records of whoever this private vendor is going to be who's going to run this program. And I realize there are going to be police officers involved, but there's a private company that's going to do this. The city of Milford should be able to audit their records and books. There is no requirement in here that they do so. Third,
When just respectfully, you're at 2:45, so try to wrap it up.
I'll try to wrap it up. I think it's outrageous that you limited this to 3 minutes. I told you that beforehand, and I stand by it. Third, there is no requirement in here that defines what a breach of this ought to be and what the penalty ought to be for it. If this private vendor breaches the agreement, whatever it may be in the future, they ought to pay a penalty that ought to be in the statute. I suggest $1,500 per breach. Lastly, that they not make any transfers of this data. The language in the ordinance is obtuse at best on that. They can't get rid of they can't use the data, but they might be able to sell it to somebody else. And you know, the audit thing is, and I know I'm over my time now, they're supposed to delete the data within 30 days. And the audits are designed to enforce that. Right now, you got body cams and dash cams, and there's some outside vendor that collects all this data, and they send an email once a month that says, yeah, we've deleted all the data. Who says that? Because they say it's true? Why shouldn't we be able to audit their books? And we should. And I hope to share with you some other issues and problems I have with it. This is a bad policy, it's a bad statute, and you ought to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Sue Julie?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sue Giroux. I live at 610 Merwin Avenue, which is right down the hill from Live Oak School. We've lived there close to 30 years now, and I agree with the chief. After 2020, the numbers have just gone crazy with the traffic on that street. Our children went to Live Oak School, so we always had concerns way back when, but now it's more concerns of, I want to say that we're like in the basin at the bottom of the hill, all of us, when we're trying to back out of our driveways or to pull out of our driveways. Not only are we dealing with the folks coming down the hill at excessive speed, at the other way we have a bend in the road, so it's nearly impossible to safely back out of our driveways. But I would also like to thank the officers every day that are there in the morning. It's literally one after another after another. The officer chases one, he resets his car, and he's off to another one. And that is going over 35 miles an hour in that zone. And like I said, there's a hill there. So if you're even going up the hill, you can't see that crosswalk until you're really in front of it, that the children cross over to Live Oak School every day. The crossing guard, the children, and it's not only during school hours, it's the weekends. There's playgrounds, there's fields, it's a neighborhood full of children that are always crossing with parents or people walking dogs. And so I just want to say that I totally and completely support the program, especially in our area, and I really appreciate everything that the department's done to research it and put in place. The officer that's there every morning, I'm telling you, one after another, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sue. Walt Rollins.
Good evening. I'm Walt Rollins. I live at 49 Shadows End Lane, and I oppose these cameras and these speed devices. First of all, they do not improve safety. There is no empirical evidence they provide safety. There's no certifiable witness to these alleged violations using these machines. There is no one who can personally testify to the circumstances of these violations. There's no accuser for the motorist who is accused to confront, which I feel is a violation of your Fifth Amendment rights. Basically, these tickets will be delivered through the U.S. mail, and I don't think many of us have much confidence in that. And what happens if you fail to get this ticket through the mail? What are the consequences of that for the alleged offender? Many of these violations will probably not be sent out quickly, probably weeks. Very difficult to defend if one forgets the circumstances. Might have had a legitimate reason to be going a little faster. You've got a wife in the car who's on her way to the hospital because she's having a baby. Is the camera going to be able to know that? Okay. A driver is not positively identified. Who knows who's driving this car? It might not be the owner, and the owner will be the one who is charged. It could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be an employee. Now the owner is forced to testify against someone and say, hey, well, wait a minute, hey, it was my neighbor driving, he borrowed my car, it must have been him. You know, I don't think I'd want to be put in that position. All right? Basically, I don't think the Board of Aldermen have done their homework on this, and I think they've jammed it down our throats. And personally, I believe if you really want to live in a surveillance society, complete surveillance society, which I don't agree with. I used to be a teacher. I opposed all the cameras everywhere in the parking lots and in the hallways. All right? I felt it was a violation of my rights. I figure if you really want to go all out, just move to communist China, because they set the trend for all of this. Thank you.
Hotchkiss, I'm sorry, I don't have the first name. Julie? I apologize.
It's okay.
John.
Good evening. John Hotchkiss, 74 Buckingham Place. I support the installation of these cameras and these devices, and I wish the program the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Peterson.
I'm Dave Peterson, 13 Sailors Lane, here in Milford, been a resident for a long time. I actually received a ticket in the mail driving in the District of Columbia a number of years ago. My wife's car was registered, so she received it, but it was fine. On a subsequent trip, I realized, yeah, I was going 10 miles over the speed limit in that area. And so after being initially thinking it was unfair, I felt like, well, no, it's actually, they were quite right. I have a fellow driver at my company who received a ticket. It was actually a video link, and it was in North Carolina, and this is about 10 years ago. And you know, I shared that with the driver, and he said, oh yeah, I knew something was going on. I was distracted. I know I ran the red light. Sure enough, the video showed that, and he verified, yeah, they got me, and it was true. We have a zero harm goal at our company too. It's a big company, and we strive for zero injuries as well as fatalities. And it'd be interesting to see in all that crash data, yes, there's only a handful of fatalities, but I bet there were a lot of people hurt too in that information. I fully support this proposal. I support anything we can do to calm traffic down. I would love to see a speed camera in Devon Center on Bridgeport Avenue. As a resident of that area, you can see the cars flying off the Washington Bridge. You can see them speeding up to get onto the bridge, and I see that on a regular basis. Appreciate everything that you all are doing to progress this, and I fully endorse this proposal and urge that you all put this into place, and I trust the city and the police department to do this in an effective way that protects our data, that protects our rights. Thank you.
Thank you. William and Carol? Gormsky? Close? I can speak for him. Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carol Garambi. I live at 36 Edidor Parkway. Edidor Parkway, if you're not familiar with it, is just a little street off Buckingham Avenue, which I usually refer to as Buckingham Motor Speedway. I'd like to say that I support the implementation of the ATE-SD as outlined this evening. And I'm hoping that it works really well as it's has in other places. And I would hope that in the future, Buckingham Avenue will be considered as well. We have a school there as well, which is Calf Pen Meadow School, and lots of kids getting off buses right on Buckingham Avenue. And I think that it would be a good place to consider for the future. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thomas Hall.
Hey, good evening, Thomas Hull, 19 Silver Street. Thank you, Chief Mello, for your time and for your research on this, and thank you, Board, for hearing our words tonight. As a retired paramedic and a business owner here in town, my job is data. I spend my entire day researching data, reviewing various different companies, multi-billion-dollar corporations, and how their data is handled. Most recently, I'm in the middle of a massive security audit, as was mentioned by Wynn earlier. These audits take up a tremendous amount of time and effort on both the auditor's part and the auditee's part. That is something that most assuredly would need to be built into this ordinance were we to deploy these cameras. The data these days we like to think is all safe. I can tell you it's not, and that's from a business perspective. Quite honestly, every single vendor I have dealt with, and I've dealt with military vendors, I've dealt with corporate vendors, I've dealt with government vendors. Every single vendor has a story of being breached. So my major concern with this is, where's the data stored? Who owns the data? How's that data going to be used? And what assurances do we have that the data is going to be used properly and in the correct manner and the manner in which it was intended? One of the other questions I had is to you, Chief Mello. We've been given a lot of data that covers the last 4 years, the last 4 years since COVID. I'd like to see what the police presence is now compared to then. I'd like to see what the instances of accidents and violations are based on a per capita police presence. So how many cops do we have out there versus how many speeders do we have? That's one of the things I'd like to see. How many cops are out there writing tickets? I'd like to see that. I'm not saying you're not doing your job, but I know the times have changed. COVID sent us all for a spin, and I know firsthand that police, fire, EMS are all suffering. So those are the answers I'd like to see, and I'd challenge the board to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is it Bob Vergala?
Good evening. Name is Bob Vergala, 11 Waterview Landing in Milford. I was raised in Milford, 62, we moved here, graduate of Jonathan Law, moved out in 75 after we got married. Now we're in retirement, we moved back here in 2013. I can say the difference in driving in Milford from then versus now is night and day. There are a lot of societal norms we're dealing with and changes, but it's horrific. I mean, when I was a teenager driving, we never thought of running a red light, flying through a stop sign or anything like that, because there'd be a cop around the corner and we'd get a ticket. If we got the ticket, it was our fault, not the policeman. We didn't point the finger. We were wrong. That's it. Right now, nickname we have in the house with a lot of friends, stop signs are stoptionals, because you may not have to stop. Red lights, right turn on red after stop, well, maybe you don't have to stop. If it's red, no one's coming, just take off. It's not safe, not safe at all. Light turns green, I wait 3 to 5 seconds and crawl through the intersection if anyone is gonna come through and T-bone me. I mean, it's horrible. The last 10 years of my working career, I spent as an EMT up in Newtown. I was on plenty of MVAs, motor vehicle accidents, car versus tree, versus motorcycle, versus bicycle, versus pedestrian. Main contributors, excessive speed for the conditions, disregard of traffic signs or signals, and distracted driving. Cell phones in use, driving. Put that with a group of drivers that have grown up watching Fast and Furious and Grand Prix on their Xbox. You can see why they feel going fast is cool, but it can have tragic, tragic outcomes with it. I'm in fully in favor of this proposal, and I like to have the board and also the state consider not just having the traffic devices for monitoring speed and red lights and designated known zones with Waze and Google telling you slow down, then you can go fast in other areas and not mark it. The problem we have with speed and running red lights is a town-wide issue and should be addressed, I should say citywide. So maybe in all entries to Milford, we should have this is a traffic enforcement area. Slow down. Thank you.
Becky Vergala.
Hello, I'm Becky Vergala, 11 Waterview Landing. I live not far from West Shore Middle School. I drive past it every day. And I would be in favor of having those devices installed at West Shore because Milford Point Road, they just fly down that street. And of course, middle school students, it's not so cool to cross at the crosswalk or where the crossing guard is. So for their own safety, I think it should be maybe put on that street as well. I've also had the experience of slowing down for a yellow light. Wow, I do that. And I've had people come up behind me, slam on the horn, go around me and give me the finger. So, it's happened more than once. It's become a ruder and cruder society out there since COVID. I don't know why, but I hope we can change that and get people to slow down and be more respectful to each other. That's all. That's what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Tom Norris. Oh, okay. Is it Claudio?
Good evening. My name is Claudio Antonini. I live on 50 Gulf Street between New Haven Avenue and Cherry Street, which if things continue like this, is going to be renamed the Fast and Furious Lane. Our immediate neighbor is St. Mary's Church and the school, and across the street there is one of the entrances to the cemetery. Friday night at 11 p.m., there was an accident at that location. A car going north at high speed hit and knocked down a 1 feet wide, 35 feet tall wooden pole, a utility pole, located directly in front of the church main entrance. Continued and hit and broke the cemetery fence. and it was only stopped by a large pine tree inside the cemetery. Otherwise, it would have broken tens of gravestones. Episodes like this are not uncommon. Since we live in that location, since the 2000, there have been a few similar accidents, all from cars traveling north at high speed, going up the hill from the railway underpass. The reason for the accidents is that drivers see the need to increase the speed a bit because of the uphill, which is understandable. But after that, there is a slight left curve and they do not reduce the speed. Any high-speed camera on that curve will be welcome. This will decrease the likelihood of property damage and noise from cars and motorbikes. Nobody talks about noise, but noise is a big problem also. But this will cover only part of the problem. We are forgetting the pedestrians. You may know that 18% of the victims in fatal accidents are pedestrians. And in that area, there are 2 bus stops, people crossing to go to church, and I can frequently see about 30 children with the school teachers crossing from east to west and back. They cannot use crosswalks because none exists. To cross Gulf Street in that particular location, if they want to do it without committing any infraction on pedestrian control, like those detailed in General Statutes 53-182 and 14-300, they should have to walk up to Cherry Street and then back, which is a quarter of a mile. And which sounds unrealistic when one just needs to cross a 30 feet wide street. The uphill and the curve make the whole issue very dangerous because drivers cannot see somebody crossing the street until it is too late. Therefore, a crosswalk is not enough. It is not coupled with a high-speed camera. So both are welcome. We have discussed with...
I'll let you wrap up. We're out of time.
Yes.
Okay.
We have discussed this situation with Representative Frank Smith, who visited us and could observe that traffic does not stop when pedestrians wish to cross the street. Speed signs are not respected. So a combination of high-speed camera and crosswalk in front of St. Mary's Church would be rather welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sarah? Oh, okay, you went. Steve Visconti.
Hello, I'm Steve Visconti from Robert Street in Milford. I originally submit some comments that I feel you guys will review before we pass this, and I appreciate that. I would just like to say that one of my concerns is the data, right? So this is likely going to get passed. It's probably going to be a good thing, right? We're probably going to make some money for the city and make some safe drivers. I would hate to see data breaches and those types of things, so I would just ask that you guys safeguard that as best as possible. I do work in the tech industry, and I can say that the cell phones that we have in our pocket are probably the deadliest weapon that has ever been sold to the American public. So it's very important that we safeguard the data of drivers who have committed crime, but also those that are being reviewed and probably didn't. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Is it Aaron? Am I reading Aaron right?
Thank you for having us tonight. This is my daughter, Sarah. I have a 7th grader at East Shore and a 4th grader at Live Oaks. Since my son was in kindergarten, we walked to school every day up Merwin Avenue towards Live Oaks. And it's become an ongoing joke since the officer has been at the corner of Sheffield and Merwin. Every time we hear the officer pull somebody over, it's like, oh, they got another one. It's an ongoing joke at breakfast. It's an ongoing joke with the parents we walk to school with every day. I genuinely appreciate the officer who's there daily. My daughter on occasion also brings the officer some treats, so I hope you don't mind that. 2 of those accidents that have happened on Merwin in the last 2 years have ended up on our front lawn. They've taken out the utility poles, so something has to be done. We have friends and family, we have gatherings. They can't park in front of our house. They have to park on the side street on Live Oaks because of the speed. Where our house is, it's where it comes, it bends along. I understand there's concerns about privacy. If I have to give up my privacy to keep my kids safe, I'm all for it. Someone's gonna end up getting killed on that street. It could be one of the kids, one of my friend's kids, a parent, or that crossing guard who's there every day putting her life on the line. It's absolutely absurd how fast people go. I appreciate everything the city's done to try to prevent it, but something more needs to be done. So I appreciate it. You have anything you want to say? No? Okay.
Thank you, Aaron. Mitchell Kaufman.
My name's Mitchell Kaufman. I live at 60 Thompson Street. I'm here to formally protest the Alderman's approval of the automatic traffic safety device ordinance at their November 7th meeting. It appears that the Alderman voted on the ordinance without providing reasonable notice to the public and allowing sufficient time for public comment. The city's agenda minutes prior to the November 7th meeting did not have any mention of the proposed ordinance, and this lack of notice failed to meet the state's requirement for a public hearing on the subject. Under Section 17A1 of the Public Act, the law clearly states that a municipality shall conduct a public hearing regarding any such plan prior to submission and by vote of its legislative body. The proper order, in other words, for submission to the state is that a public hearing requirement be done first. The municipality must notify the public and hold a hearing to gather input from the community. Then comes the legislative approval after the hearing. The legislative body must approve the plan. And then comes the submission to the Department of Transportation. Once approved, that plan is submitted to the DOT in the prescribed format. While the November 7th Alderman's agenda may not have initially anticipated a vote on the ordinance following the Special Ordinance Committee's meeting earlier that evening, the public should have been notified that a vote was to occur within the future Alderman's agenda, which is on the web. This would have ensured that Milford citizens were properly informed and given the opportunity to comment before the vote. This process is in place to ensure public involvement and proper governmental approval before the plan reaches the State Transportation Department for review or implementation. Therefore, I urge the Board of Aldermen to reconsider their decision and follow the necessary legal procedures, including conducting a public hearing to allow the community to provide input in this manner ahead of their vote, which was done previously. Thank you for your attention to this issue.
Thank you. Scott Gaudette.
Good evening. My name is Scott Gaudette. I live at 485 Woodruff Road with my family. First, I'd like to thank Chief Mello and the police department for their attention to our neighborhood. My wife and I have two children, 12 and 14 years old, who both grew up in our home. There's no sidewalks on our section of Woodruff Road, and oftentimes it seems as though drivers are looking to set a land speed record between Burnt Plains Road and Ridge Road, those two stop signs. While we love our neighborhood, our children need to walk their bikes through our neighbor's yard in order to go to Ambrose, where it's actually safe to ride their bikes. We've seen a significant increase in traffic over these past few years, specifically with tractor trailers. 3 times over the past 15 years, we've had the wires that connect our house to the internet knocked down by tractor trailers and had to have Optimum come out to replace them. And that isn't slowing down. We're seeing more and more trucks cutting from North Street through Woodruff Road over to the Post Road. This fall, I actually witnessed an impatient driver blow past the swinging stop sign on my son's school bus. I gave him the one-finger salute, which I am not able to live down with my 12-year-old son. He appreciated that. I'd implore you guys to really err on the side of caution related to the data that we are going to be using. It's illuminating to hear more about what's actually going to be captured. But I do think anything we can do to slow down the traffic on Woodruff Road would absolutely be welcome. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mary Oak.
My name is Mary Oak. I live at 30 Dorinna Place. As you can tell by my voice, it's not American, even though I was born here. But I grew up in the UK. These things have been in existence for a long time over there. I actually got caught by a camera in 2010 when my father was still alive. And I was in the wrong. But it frightened me to begin with, to learn about it. Yes, there is a concern about data, but frankly, it's well overdue that we did something here. I've only lived for 7 years here, but by Christ, since COVID, it has got diabolical. I'm all for it. If you can make sure about the data aspect, that would be good. I do want to put forward a couple of places. I like the fact of what somebody said about the green. Yes. At the end of Dorinna, we have construction going on onto River Street. 3 times this summer, I'm on the crosswalk. Somebody's kindly stopped before I started walking. The slip road on this side, where people are supposed to yield, they don't give a damn. And somebody came along and honked at the car that stopped, went round them and zipped up Dorinna Place 3 times in a row. They nearly took me out, but they didn't. And tonight, I was going to crosswalk to the island part to get here by foot, because I like to walk like a typical European when I can. And I was nearly knocked down again by a New Yorker. And I'm sorry, we were written up as the best town to move to in Connecticut in the New York Times during COVID. And we have a bunch of New Yorkers and a bunch of Bostonians, because we're halfway between the 2 cities. Both cities, the drivers like to put their foot down, regardless anything else. I am a Brit at heart. That will always be. I'm American by birth. But the one thing I know from living in this country permanently since 1982, in many parts, is Americans have a tendency to think of me and I instead of we concept. I come from a culture and a family, it was a we concept over I. That needs to be drummed into Americans. I understand where it comes from. Your culture, the people that moved here came from another country except for the American Indian. And it was the future, whether you came out of Ireland from famine or you were trying to have your religious views and so on, it was to make a life financially. And that comes in the I concept. It's got to end. We need to think we for everybody. Thank you.
Did I miss Carl Hall? I apologize.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody in this exercise of democracy, just hearing each other as citizens, whether we agree or not. I would encourage the board to rethink this decision. Get some more data. Get some more information before we bring in a business model that essentially hives off the ability to tax your citizens. And it is a tax, Chief, I respectfully disagree. It is a tax. I lived under this in Washington, D.C. You go to an arbitrator, you may be on the right, the arbitrator, uneducated person, just says no, and you have no recourse, and you end up paying a fine. I was parked in a good spot. She said I wasn't in a good spot. Arbitrator said, nope, you were in a bad spot. Picture says otherwise. What do I do? Why would we want to bring that to our city, which, as the previous speaker mentioned, is a place that was the best place to live during COVID? I also think COVID, all our data, as my brother said, only came after COVID. What's the enforcement data look like beforehand? And why would we want to jump right into a system that takes our privacy away? And it does. And it is the whole aim of practical politics to create an endless series of hobgoblins, some of them imaginary. These ones are real. There is no one here that disagrees that there's speeding in places. I can look at East Broadway and Surf. People blow that light all the time, pedestrians, everybody. However, should we go all the way to 11 and say, let's get cameras, as opposed to doing a study of the traffic patterns in the city? This is a complex place. I've lived in 20 plus countries all over the world. I've seen the best and the worst. This is a complex city in terms of streets. I'm sure it's hard for your young officers to learn everything here. I think we should spend some time, take a look at that. And why can't we have speed bumps in some of these locations? I mean, as opposed to something that takes our privacy away. And frankly, that's why we founded this country. It was about independence and freedom from that. And the other thing is, Mr. Mayor, many of us voted for you for a change in direction away from the heavy hand of government in our lives. This is the opposite direction. And I would encourage you all to rethink this, give it some more time, study it, and then come back to us and do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. George Beganoli? Close enough.
George Baglini, 96 Ardmore Road. Good evening, everyone. Excuse my parents. I rushed here from the gym because I felt it was really important to be here. I'd like to relay a couple of things that are personal and very relevant to what's been addressed tonight. The very first slide of the location of this device was mentioned that it was on Orange Ave, near between, I guess, Orange Ave School and Platt Tech. I taught at Platt Tech for 17 years, and in that time, as the driving became more and more and more disgusting and hard to deal with, we have kids exiting the school, we have students exiting and crossing that road, and now with the formation of the new facility across the street, I was the coach. I coached 3 sports there. And especially football, which now we have to cross that road with 60 plus students. Think about that. Think about cars zipping down that road 50 miles an hour and more. And we've got to get students safely across that road and back. Is this the answer? I don't know. But I fully support the effort to try to do something. Something needs to be done, and there simply aren't enough police officers in this city to monitor this thing. So that was a personal experience, number 1. Number 2, and by the way, football is not the only one who uses that. Soccer uses it as well. We have to get all those students safely across Orange Ave. On another personal note, I'm a cyclist, and I still am, despite my age and despite my children's efforts to try to get me to stop doing it because of the danger. It's a dangerous thing to do. I have been hit by cars twice now, once very seriously. Cars are very, very distracted. When you're on the side of the road riding a bike and they're speeding, and by the way, Gulf Street, I go down every single ride, and now there is a device there that shows you your speed. I've had cars go by me at that location, and that thing lights up red, and they're doing 40, 45 miles an hour, and that's where the bike lane ends. And so I'm literally trying to avoid being hit from behind. I literally put a sonar device on the back of my bike to show me the cars that are approaching me from behind, just so I know when I need to be careful. One of the most difficult parts of my ride is when I'm off my bike trying to cross the post road. I live on the north end off Woodruff Road, and I have to, because I ride along the beach, I have to cross the post road twice. I have to cross it to get down to the shore, and I have to cross it to come back. And the most dangerous part of my ride is coming across the post road at the end of Woodruff Road, even though there's a crosswalk there, and I literally have to look both ways for seconds, multiple seconds, for cars to stop that I can get across. And there's a green light to cross in the crosswalk. Not to say nothing of the cars coming off Woodruff Road, by the way, that pay no attention at all to a crosswalk.
Mr. Begley, could I ask you to wrap up?
That is my wrap up. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Deb Smith.
Good evening. Deb Smith, 334 Edgefield Avenue. I don't agree with this proposal. I appreciate all the research you've done, Chief Mello, but I think there's a lot more that needs to be discussed. I think that my husband Wynn, did a lot of research as well, and I think a lot more of that type of research should come out before we make a decision on this. And I like that the public has a lot of input in this, so I think we need more of that. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Deb. That exhausts my list. Is there anyone who wanted to speak that has not had the opportunity? Please approach the podium.
My name is Jessica Hall. My boyfriend and I purchased 86 Gulf Street in 2021. I don't need to recount the horrifying accident that I actually witnessed Friday night because my neighbor already has, but we had just arrived home from a week-long business trip 13 minutes prior. So that was terrifying because that telephone pole could have very well been us. However, that speed and that behavior doesn't only happen at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. My kitchen window looks out over the field that the preschoolers and the school children in St. Mary's School use on a daily basis to play in that field. The traffic that comes down and up Gulf Street as well as Old Buckingham Avenue is insanely fast. I'm not saying that we need to do the speed cameras, but I would like some sort of police presence there as well as the proposed locations and the red light cameras I'm in support of. However, I think that there is some additional research that needs to be done. Most focused on things like the contract, the revenue, the income, and how does that affect our budget? Who is the vendor that's going to install and monitor these devices? What happens when their contract is up? Are they going to change their fee structure? What are we going to do as a city with the revenue that we receive from that? And if we don't go forward with these cameras and we go back to a police presence, what is going to be put in place? Because when we bought this property in 2021, just before we closed on the house, there were 2 accidents that occurred that did significant damage to our property and almost delayed the sale. So I am very affected by this. Initially, when we first bought the property, I noticed that there was police officers that were sitting on Old Buckingham Avenue for a fair amount of time. Since 2021, that has ceased to happen. I don't see those police officers. And that's a little bit of, an adjustment to my sense of security for, my home, but as well as the school and the school children. I've seen children run out into the street. I think it's something that needs to be looked at with the town. But if we don't have the support for police staff, as I heard tonight, I thought there were more cruisers on staff, but it seems like there are less than 10. Where can we get this support to be able to monitor what's going on and control it? And that point as well, where with the monitoring, our Amazon profiles, our Netflix profiles. This is the biggest recording device that exists in the world, and every single one of us in this room has one in our pockets. So why are we concerned with stationary devices that are only taking a clip of a picture of the make, model, and license plate of my car, which very likely could be taken off and put on somebody else's car if they're going to steal that vehicle? So I'm not so concerned about the pictures or the credit card information, but the revenue, the contracts, the vendor information. If we could have some sort of public record, notice made, to us to see what we're going to do with that money, with that revenue, and how it affects our safety budget or our city budget, I would love to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, guys. Good evening, Chief. Thank you for your presentations, first of all. I always commend all the good work you do for the city of Milford. You've been here a long time, and you've done a terrific job over the years. Thank you for that. I do have some questions on, I'm a numbers guy, so what's this program going to cost? I know it's going to go out to bid, but I've heard numbers of like $20,000 a month. If we didn't get the ticket revenue, say we only got $10,000 a month, are we stuck with the other 10 grand? To support that, it's going to be at least 400 tickets a month to support that. So that's a lot of tickets, and I assume most of those tickets are going to happen to occur for people in Milford. Is it going to be millions of dollars? That's even worse. If all that revenue coming in, again, that's all Milford residents paying millions of dollars in fines. And where's that money going to? Is that staying in the police department, or is that going to the general fund of City of Milford? So those are just some questions I have. I appreciate all the numbers that you've presented. That's a lot of traffic, especially on the Post Road. But I see, maybe people will start going around and then bringing more traffic into the side streets just because they're in a hurry and they don't want to get a ticket. So I see a lot of things that could possibly happen. So those are just some questions I have. So thank you for all your work, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good evening. Ken Fellenbaum, 182 Forest Road. I came tonight to listen to the Chief's presentation. Very well done. Answered a lot of questions I had. I also wanted to hear the pros and cons of the people that used this opportunity to speak. This is Milford, Connecticut, and I have every confidence that the chief and the department, this board and the Board of Aldermen will implement this program in a way that will keep Milford safe. I've said before, if people don't feel safe, nothing else matters. And I really don't feel safe in a lot of places in Milford, including my own road. And one of the first things I told my granddaughter when she started to drive, do not automatically go when the light turns green. And the speeding issue is another thing that really needs to be addressed. I thank you all for the effort. I know there's a lot more needs to be done. And as I say, I have every confidence it will be done the Milford way and done correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Hello, my name is Barbara Carissimi. I'm at 64 Kirkside Avenue. Just want to say that I am in support of the Milford Police Department proposal, and I appreciate all they do to keep us safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. I came late. I do apologize. I probably missed some pertinent information that was given out. My name is Jeff Viscount. I live at 59 Chatham Avenue. I'm a retired truck driver, served 6 years in the Navy from the mid-'70s to the early '80s. I'm here to express my daunting concern with the installation of the red light cameras. Okay, I'm very concerned about the abuse by the companies that contracted to install them. First off, let's not kid ourselves. They make their money on how many tickets they issue. So what's to stop them from changing the duration of the yellow lights to a shorter period of time to enhance their revenues? I'm sure the members of the board are aware that these cameras have been around for a long time. I recall reading at least twice in the distant past where in California, fines were issued to companies who'd done exactly this. In the meantime, these are those who were unjustly ticketed and were not only fined wrongly, but also now accumulated points against their driver's license, which in turn reflects upon their insurance premiums. And please don't try to convince me, the public here, that mistakes can't happen either. I'll use an example from my own personal experience, okay? I have an E-ZPass account, and about a year and a half ago, I received a charge on them for an off-road ATV two-wheel drive motorcycle that I own. And this was issued in the Adirondack Mountains area. Now, my motorcycle hasn't been driven for 10 years. And they sent me, along with the charge, they sent me a picture, and it was just a black box, and there was nothing there. They eventually did, restore the money, but my point is mistakes can happen, okay? Because first off, it's illegal to have this on the road because it's an all-terrain plate on it, all right? Okay, let me just, okay. Well, they relented and reversed the charge, but my point here is the idea that there can be mistakes made is a reality. If this camera issue should become a reality, I myself will be going around checking the duration of the red lights at all the intersections of where the cameras are installed with a stopwatch. I inherently do not trust the companies in this instance, being how they accumulate their revenues for the use of the cameras. In closing, I will strongly say that there absolutely has to be checks and balances with this proposal should it become reality. And I would expect this board to implement those checks and balances too. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hello, my name is Catherine Curley. I live at 37 Pearl Hill Street. I've heard a lot of pros and cons tonight, and I do want to state I support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Allison Pitts. I live at 329 Rock Lane, which is just a couple streets down from Live Oak School. I have two children that attend Milford Public Schools. My daughter is 12 and attends East Shore, and I have a 4th grade son. So because we live so close to Live Oaks, we walk to and from school every day. We're crossing Merwin Avenue at the crosswalk with a crossing guard every day. And our terrifying experience at the crosswalk was one morning we were crossing with the cross guard out and her stop sign up. We were nearly at the double yellow line, almost halfway across the street, and a car that was not paying attention, speeding, went right across in front of myself and my children. And what is really scary is that we could have been one of those statistics and one of those numbers. So I am in support of anything that will help encourage drivers to slow down and pay attention. I teach my children that being responsible is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. And it seems that drivers are not being responsible, and in fact, they're being really reckless. And I think that we need more people watching and encouraging them to do the right thing and keep the kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Rossi, Thompson Street. So I've listened to everyone, and valid pros and cons for both sides. My question is, we all know this is a speeding issue, and it seems to me, since I've lived in Milford, that the growth of Milford has not kept up with the amount of deterrent to what speeding is. I don't know what the criteria is for a red light, but there's only one in downtown Milford on one side. So yes, I'm sure cameras could be helpful, but it seems to me that the people who are driving that are doing the speeding maybe need some things that are going to stop them. Somebody mentioned speed bumps, which are very effective in a lot of other towns in Connecticut. I understand there's an expense. I've been told that a traffic light costs a lot of money. I'm not sure where the money for the red lights is coming from, cameras, but is there a way that there's some other detriments that can be put up? There is one light from Mr. Max all the way down. Of course people are speeding. There's one light barely around the green. Of course people are speeding. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and Chief. I think, first of all, I want to compliment you on the terrific job you did on the demonstration and communicating with the residents as to what this program is all about. I've been a resident of Milford for over 55 years, and every year I think that my fellow drivers are getting worse and worse. They're not stopping at stop signs. They're going for red lights. If I had my way, half of the road sign that says turn right on red, I could do away with them. I don't know how many times I've had a green arrow in my favor, turning right, turning left, and the road across the way, I know they must have a sign that says turn right on red, and they're cutting me off. It just, the driving habits have been getting worse and worse every year, and I just think that anything that you can do, the police department can do to make the drivers drive safer for the residents and the children in the city would be a tremendous advantage. And I'm 100% in favor of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Anyone else wishing to address the commission? Chief, you wanted the floor?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who came tonight to...
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Sorry I'm late. Milford resident, live on Forest Road. One of my neighbors, a police officer, he actually sent me, he can't be here, got forced in. He said, they're gonna mail you a ticket. What's the proof that you're actually gonna get the ticket? Because a lot of wasted mail, and then now you're gonna be penalized for a ticket you don't know you got. How are you gonna fix that? And then, was there ever a legitimate survey where this has been proven to stop violations? And then instead of wasting the money of taxpayers, why don't we hire more police officers? I mean, it's worked on Orange Avenue. They put a police officer there. They've given tickets out. It's worked. Why don't we just hire more police officers instead of wasting taxpayer dollars on speed cameras? So that was from a police officer who's familiar with speed cameras, red light ticket cameras. He doesn't believe in them. He got forced in or he'd be here himself.
Thank you. I think we have one more. No.
I would like to just address, my name is Laura Hannafin. I live at 22 Odell Avenue in Milford. One of the things that concerns me is that most of the roads, or a lot of the roads in Milford, are 25 miles an hour. 34 miles an hour is too fast. This gentleman who rides his bike, which became a bike lane, it's 2 lanes, it's not forgiving. If you're going faster than 25 miles an hour, there is nowhere to stop. The other day I was driving, there was a family riding their bikes, it's a blind curve, and a car was coming in the opposite direction. If I had been going faster, that family would have been hit. It's crazy that it's only 35 miles an hour that they're going to get a ticket. The speeding has gone off the charts. In Milford, on Odell, it's a speedway from stop sign to stop sign. I don't know what happened to speed bumps, but I came here tonight with the question of how to get the street reviewed. how do we get our streets reviewed for speed bumps, for these red lights or speed lights? How does that review happen? Because we need it in Bayview. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Frank Musanti and 26 Covington Drive. I would like to say that I do not believe that this is for public safety. I believe this is more to collect revenue. And studies that have been done in Houston over a 10-year shows that the only thing that went up was rear ends. And I'd like to think that we should do a little more research and a little more consideration before we make a decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hi, my name's Lenny Wisniewski. I live at 596 Gulf Street here in Milford, and I too have lived in Milford for many, many years. My family came here in the 50s, and I grew up in Milford. And as a kid, I sped around town a little bit, and okay, we need some traffic enforcement. But my issue tonight is to address the parking lot at Gulf Beach, because I live across the street. And kids do race up back and forth, and it's, you know, it's doable up until about 2 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to sleep and you hear the tires burning out and screeching and pulling out. And I think that if we just lock the gate at 10 o'clock, I think that's a fair enough time. It would keep everything nice and quiet and no one would get in trouble at 2 or 3 in the morning. That's all. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all that spoke tonight. I know a lot of you left, but I just wanted to go over a few things that maybe I wasn't clear in my presentation. First of all, let me talk about the revenue side. Well, let me talk about how the data was collected. That data was collected by traffic engineering and collected by devices by our officers as well. So it is good data. In fact, you can see the data for yourself. Often you can go on the State of Connecticut website. It talks about traffic flow. It'll talk about timing and phasing and sequencing of traffic lights. So it's good data. Although I suppose if you don't trust government, then you may think it's bad data, but I think there's some trust got to be built in with the traffic engineering. The revenue use. So we know we know the traffic flows, and we know the violations. And so we've done research so we can project that. And we have many states and many countries who have used these devices, and we know that you're going to see from 70 to 90%. You may see less, but I doubt you're going to see 100%. So when you look at those fines that will be levied, these civil fines, again, not infractions, those fines are collected by the vendor, and I'll get to the data in a second. The revenues are clear. I encourage you to look at PA Public Act 23-116. There's a lot of specificity in there that addresses a lot of things that you folks had asked about. It talks about what the revenue can be used for. The revenue is used to support the program, to pay for the program. The additional revenues, and there will be additional revenues, and we've done those cost projections, and those are in the plan. Those revenues, by statute, can only be used to fund public safety initiatives, to make roads safer. Whether they put traffic lights out, or they put crosswalks in, or they widen roads, or whatever, or they put speed calming in, those kind of things. None of that money comes back to the police department. There is no revenue benefit to the police department budget. Again, the revenue supports the program, pays the vendor who does charge a fee for the installation and for the maintenance. Government, at least governments the size of Milford, do not have the expertise to install cameras and to engineer these things. We, being law enforcement, we being government, partner with private sector in many areas, as does almost every single government and police department. The New York City Police Department, the LA Police Department. If you look at a police department, if you look at those cameras that are on right now, that is being stored in cloud storage, like most of what you probably all use. The data that's being collected are photographs or images of the license plate of the car, and I'm sure to show a portion of the car, and only those, and it's required by the statute. Those are then sent to the police department, and a police officer has to verify those. So to the gentleman's point, if you don't trust the vendor and you think the vendor's going to fudge the statistics or claim that there was a violation when there wasn't, we'll have a copy of that, and you'll have a copy of that, and that gets mailed. For those folks that don't like using credit cards to pay for, online shopping or taxes or whatever, you use your credit to buy gas, you don't have to do it here. You can pay, you can mail a check, you can use a credit card to pay the vendor. They will collect the services. We use private sector folks to handle our record systems, to collect fines for parking tickets, for the speed, the red light cameras that you approved many years ago. So government does partner with private sector. And so how do we verify? First of all, remember, it's an image of your license plate that belongs to the state, and while it's in the public. And so if you're concerned about the vendor doing something nefarious with your license plate in the public sphere, that was recorded in the public sphere, I can tell you that as we look at all of our data streams, DNA, we use private sector folks to use DNA, to record DNA, or to test DNA. And we see what's in that cloud database. And we'll know that the retention schedule is there. We'll know when those have to be deleted. And if they're still there, the same way the body cams, the same way the dash cams, the same way our crime scene footage, the same way that we and most other police departments across this country conduct business with private sector. The partnerships are essential. I agree, there is a trust, but we need to verify. That's how we'll verify. If we look in our database and we see there are images there, we can delete those images, or we can ask, why aren't those deleted? I can't convince you, if you believe that private sector, the people that hold your stuff in cloud storage and collect your credit cards and that are collecting these photos from their cameras, if they're using those for some nefarious purpose, I can't change your mind. I can only tell you what I've told you in the beginning of the presentation now and what's in the statute. What's in the bill. So that's the issue on data and credit card information, and I think it's probably far safer than the phones that you all have. And a couple of you brought that up, which I tend to agree with. The gentleman, my voice is starting to crack. The gentleman that talked about the submission, this has to be approved by DOT. So I apologize if I didn't make that clear. There was an ordinance that is meaningless that establishes the ability to have a local program. Before there can be a plan, we have to finish our work. There's a lot of technical work that needs to be finished. A lot has been done. That plan will be finalized, including, it may or may not change. There may be some streets that are added. In fact, it was interesting that most of the areas that you brought up are being studied and have been studied. We have an enormous amount of data. If you recall what I said initially, we have a traffic division that all they do is traffic studies and gather data. That information will then be placed in the final plan, and it'll be submitted again to the Board of Aldermen at a public meeting, at an opportunity where you folks can come and be heard. The aldermen, I'm sure, Will, if you saw the last one, it was a question for over 2 hours. Or thereabouts. They'll have many questions, and if you have more questions, contact your representative and ask them to ask that. We'll provide you with those answers. Regarding administrative fees can't go up, they're set in statute. The fines can't go up, they're set in statute. If you read that, you'll see that. Also important, and I failed to mention this, every 3 years, this has to be reviewed, and it can be terminated at that point. Any changes, any additional streets, we have to go through this process all over again. Not sure. I'm looking forward to that, but I will do it if that's what you folks want. So the fines can't change, the timing on the lights can't change, the fees can't change. The vendor is chosen by the rules of the city of Milford, by the ordinance. That ordinance, you can change it, whether that be an RFP, whether that be a bid. There are certain requirements that we have. It has to be, we got to make sure that they can do the things we need them to do. There are a number of vendors in this space, a number of them that are doing this all across the country. When we pick a vendor, I invite you to research those vendors. And I think I've hopefully hit on all the points that you've asked for. So those are where the checks and balances are. I think, again, if you really are interested, you study this issue from its inception at the state level, like we have. I think you'll see that I think Connecticut did a pretty good job. And to the final point about hiring more police officers, I'm all for it. This is probably not going to cost you anything directly because it's going to be paid for by fines for the program. And unless Milford is an outlier and we have 100% compliance, which has never happened on this planet that I know of, at least not the data that we've seen, police officers will cost you for 10 about $1.4, $1.5 million. I'd like 20. I'll take the $3 million to hire 20 police officers, and we'll do some more traffic enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Before we adjourn, I want to echo, I think it was Carl Hull who started his comments by saying, regardless of whether you supported this or not, the exercise displayed here tonight is a reminder of what democracy is all about. So thank you for coming out on a kind of chilly, rainy December evening to hear the proposal, to offer your comments for those of you who spoke, and for those of you who didn't, to come out and hear about this proposal and be part of it. I applaud you and I thank you. And at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second motion and second, all in favor? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll take a 5-minute break. Take a break. Stretch. Joanne, would you do roll call?
Commissioner Bergamy, Commissioner Jago, Commissioner Major, Commissioner Morone, Commissioner Vitelli, Commissioner Rubenstein, Commissioner Chairman Smith,
Here.
Chief Mello, and Deputy Chief Sergeant Kryniak.
Appointments, Chief.
Mr. Chairman, there are none.
Citizen comments? I think not. Approval of the meeting minutes from last month's meeting?
I move that we approve the minutes as submitted.
Second. Motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Consideration of the chief on matters of administration. Chief?
Mr. Chairman, you have in your packet the meeting dates for the 2025 Police Commission meetings. There's a donation from John Kirker for $300 for the K-9 Fund.
You could turn your mic on there.
I'm sorry. Apologies. You have the suggested meeting dates for the 2025 Police Commission meetings. Item B, this is a donation from John Kirker for $300, and I'd recommend that be placed in the K-9 Fund.
I'm sorry, so do we want to vote on the list, or we're just providing this informationally?
On the donation, we need a...
Yeah, but the meeting list is just information. Yeah. Motion on the accepting of the...
Move to accept that donation.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, item C, Safe Mileage Award for 11 officers who have accumulated 25,000 safe driving miles. They'll be awarded 8 hours of, actually they have been awarded 8 hours of compensation time. That's just information. Mr. Chairman, item D, general comments. We start our next session of the Police Academy on January 17th. We'll have 8 of our officers, 8 of our people will be in there. We'll have 8 candidates. We would have 9, but we hired Julie Johnson, who was a captain at the New Haven Police Department, lifelong resident of Milford, and she was working part-time with us and elected to come on full-time. That was great. To be able to get a full-time police officer with that experience is really a credit to us. So we now have a captain from New Haven, we have a lieutenant from New Haven, we have a sergeant from New Haven, and we have a deputy chief from Hamden. I know all of them personally, and they're excellent additions to the police department. And I also wanted to report that in February, we'll be sending one of our officers to K-9 school. We have not purchased a K-9 yet. We're trying to scrape up the money to buy a K-9. We're looking for about $10,500 cumulatively. I don't know how much we have in the account, but I wanted you to know that will be likely in February. We purchased the dog in January. That is all.
Thank you, Chief. Report on planning and zoning request, residential development under 830G with lot consolidation of Bridgeport Avenue.
I move that we approve traffic's recommendation.
Second. Discussion. This is the old Bridgeport flyer, right? Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Chip? Acceptance.
Item 7, A, B, C, and D. I move that we accept the reports from the Special Investigations Unit, Detective Bureau, Community Engagement Report, Traffic Division, and Licensing Report, as submitted.
Second. Motion to accept reports. And second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We have no unfinished business. Under new business, none?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Commendations.
I'd like the Deputy Chief, please.
It's the first time that I've been on this side of the mic, so this is pretty exciting for me. This is a commendation for Officer Kyle Magnan and Officer Tim Wydra, dating back to the end of October.
in the early afternoon. Both officers were dispatched to a call that a vehicle had inexplicably left the roadway and collided with a tree on the ring road around the mall. It was out in front of the area of Target. When they arrived, they discovered that the operator was in an unresponsive state, no breathing, no pulse. Both of them immediately started administering CPR until EMS arrived. Pulse and breathing were restored, and the operator was left in the care of the emergency room staff a little bit later in stable condition. Reportedly, the crash was likely due to the operator suffering some sort of acute medical emergency while driving. Excellent job to both of them.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. We have nothing for executive session.
We have nothing else. We have no
Nothing
executive,
else.
no executive session. Move to adjourn.
So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Thank you guys for being
Thank
here
you, and
tonight.
thank you to all of you for coming out tonight and running this hearing. I very much appreciate that.
Thank you, Chief, for doing such a good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Always good to be in your company.